It's the Regular Expressions podcast. Join Noah Heldman and Ben Griswold as they talk about technology, consulting, and life. In episode 21, Ben and Noah dig into the differences between vibe coding and spec-based coding, and why it matters for quality, security, and more. It's Rachel, your AI spokesmodel, and I like to think if I had been vibe coded, I'd probably sound more like R2-D2, and you wouldn't understand a word I'm saying unless you speak binary E7 like R2 does. And I'm off track. To episode 21, Darth Vibe versus Darth Spec.
Ben Griswold, good morning.
Noah Heldman, good morning to you, sir. How are things?
Things are great, and they're great because we had a really interesting thing happen to us with coding. We were coding, which is already, what's going on? This is crazy. We both admittedly use AI, as most people do now, to help us with our coding. And people may have heard of vibe coding. I was talking to my wife about it last night, explaining what it is. And we'll give a quick definition just because I think it's good context. And there's also spec-based coding, which to me is very much the opposite. And maybe before we jump into what our little story is about these things, what's your definition of vibe coding?
My definition of vibe coding is someone who's really never coded before. They just come up with an idea, they use the available tools, and they really highly depend on the chat availability within whatever product they're using to drive the coding. Here's my idea. Show me what you can do.
Yep. And before we even get to the definition of spec-based coding, if you imagine vibe coding, you can pay a little bit of money or a whole lot of money for different quality vibe coding tools. A lot of people who are vibe coding, I think, are going for pretty inexpensive options and might not be choosing the $200 a month and up options. And it's pretty easy to get past $200 a month for some of these tools when you're using the most advanced and latest versions with the biggest context windows, meaning how much information it can keep in its memory to make its job easier to build you the app you want. So really interesting that you put vibe coding, inexperienced coders with tools that maybe aren't the most expensive and best of breed and hope for the best. So let's compare that to spec-based coding. What is spec-based coding, Mr. Ben?
Well, I think I'd like to hear your definition there because you really jumped on spec-based coding early on. I think it was, you modeled this off of Kiro. That was available through Amazon. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
Yeah. So tell me everything, Noah.
So I was following the different tools that were coming out back when Kiro was announced, and I can't even tell you when that was. It seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside in terms of AI coding tools, but GitHub Copilot way early on, which I tried at the very beginning and just didn't really do good things for me. And early days of Cursor and Windsurf. When Amazon Kiro came out, what it focused on was this idea of a spec. And it had a very prescriptive way of managing it where you'd have your steering documentation, which is what is really the philosophy behind this thing I'm trying to build? What are some of the constraints? What are some of the guidelines? And you would have 3 different steering documents that helped shape that. And it had instructions built into the agent that was behind the LLM behind all the code generation so that it knew how to create and how to process these steering documents. And that was really for the app overall. Then if you wanted to build out a feature, you would ask it to create a spec. And a spec had 3 different parts. There's a requirements document, with again, a very prescriptive layout of the kinds of things that it should do. So like the given, when, then format, given this prerequisite, when I do this, then this should happen. Very much like test cases for advanced QA situations. That was your requirements document. Then you had a design document, which got into some of the technical concerns, some of the trade-offs. You could iterate with that and refine it to make sure it was not over engineering, but meeting all the requirements you had. And then the third document was a tasks document, which took the requirements and the design and laid it out into a list of tasks that it needed to complete with lots of detail and traceability back to the requirements. Almost like this really fast mini waterfall project that was happening in a couple documents. And then once you had those in place, it would ask you to review and validate that they were accurate. You might make a few more updates. And then it was off to the races. You would just say, okay, go build this thing. And it would finish task one, ask you to validate, was this right? Okay, great. Let's move on to the next thing. And then you might realize something along the way, because we can't think of every possible requirement or design consideration upfront. But as you're having this conversation, it's like you're talking to a really smart technical architect / developer, and you get into that mode. And when you've had that level of experience, the conversation makes sense, or you know what to ask, you know what to look for. So that's spec-based coding, obviously very different from, hey, I don't know how to code. I have an idea. I have a $20 tool. Build this thing for me.
Yeah. And really, when it comes right down to it, you put a lot of thought, a lot of problem solving into developing that spec. This isn't something that is developed in 5 minutes. You've spent hours building out these specs.
Correct.
Help me generate this. Let me review. Okay, these are this because I've been doing software engineering for 25 plus years. I know that's not the right approach. Please update to do this thing, right? So it isn't just the AI that's coming up with the solution for you, the overall spec. You're really driving at points to say, nope, this is how you need to do it, which I think we can only appreciate that perspective, right? You're really shifting and getting that true value out of experience as you're developing the spec.
Yeah, and the spec itself is not 100% human written, but it's mostly human written. That I think is where things tend to fall down, because you could vibe code to create a spec that you would then call spec-based coding, but it doesn't really translate. So when I'm writing a spec, the specs end up in markdown documents that sit in your code base, and then can refer to them as context while it's building out the app. And markdown is great because it's easy for AI to parse and read, but it can understand structure and syntax, headings, bold, numbered lists, all these things, which is just a little bit easier for it to parse. But what I tend to do is kind of write a spec outline or a set of spec hints in my own markdown document. It's kind of like the seed of an idea, and it'll be more of a brain dump as I'm trying to think of, okay, so I want to make sure I hit this requirement. Oh, if I'm going to use Google for authentication, that I need to make sure it covers the setup on the Google Cloud account, so that that I can log in with that. And which one do I want to tie that to? My personal, or will I have a work account? So I'm thinking through all these things, and I might just be dumping them into this file, and then I'll reorganize the file to where I know it's at least going to make sense to the AI agent. And then I'll say, okay, here's my rough but organized notes on this spec that I want to build, this feature I want to build. Go and build a formal spec for me from that. So it'll take my notes, turn it into the requirements. I'll review and validate and say, yep, this looks great. Go on to design, then go on to tasks, and then it can begin. But you're right, that process can take a solid hour of very focused, iterative work to capture all the things that you want to accomplish. And I'm talking about for one feature, maybe a good size and fairly complicated feature, but it's an hour to go through the thought process of just building out the notes that drive the spec for that feature.
Right. It's a combo. right? This is what I want the solution to do, as well as this is how I want to drive you into doing it in a lot of cases. And what I've discovered is that as the code begins to be written, there may be a, oops, you didn't really follow my instructions, or probably more, which is probably 90% of the time it doesn't get it right, didn't follow your instructions, um, versus, oh, my instructions really weren't clear enough. So
Right.
let's now update the spec, and then let's drive home what the next, let's really move forward with the solution again, the agent writing the codes and updating. Mm.
Yeah, it's true. And I think as we're talking through these ideas, I have
Mhm.
an example from recent personal experience of a vibe coding project that was amazing. Someone who didn't really code, but built an app and
Mm.
put it out into the world, asked me to review it, and immediately I found some highly insecure, exposed
Right.
secrets, because it wasn't clear to this person that these were secrets that they needed to be protected, because it's just a
Mhm.
long encrypted string that they didn't realize would give complete access to the database and was
Mhm.
just sitting in a variable that was exposed. Now, the damage would have
Mhm.
been pretty minor in this case. It's one person trying out an app,
Right.
but that's that can be expressed in much worse ways when someone
Mhm.
has something that gets popular quickly, as I think you and I discovered recently.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Then there's another aspect of this. If you're simply vibe coding, that reviewing of the code is, it's impossible. Right. You just don't know how to code. So how do you know the code is doing what you need to do? You're not clear on the vulnerabilities, but you're also not clear on how to test that code nor the functionality. It just created this brand new thing that you are really the first user for. Right.
Yep.
Like you have to say, oh, let's poke around this app now, see how it's used, and consider all of the conditions that may not be covered even in that UI. And I want to mention this. I think that the majority of vibe coding is like an application with an interface, right?
Right.
And where there's some real power is the back end. It's these libraries, these functions, these tools, components that you're generating that really power an application. And that's where it's super critical that you have the spec really solid and you're able to understand the code and make sure that, yes, this is super secure. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think that there's this really big gap for folks if they're vibe coding, right? It gets you the thing you want to do, which is probably 50% of the way, where a software engineer would then do, it's missing the hardening, it's missing the testing, it's missing the security vulnerabilities, it's missing the components of where to host this, and maybe it hints on where to host it, but how do
Right.
you appropriately host something? How do you
Yeah.
appropriately send emails? Like, what are those other, what are the platforms that you can use? There's so many. What's my database that I'm going to leverage? Like, there's so much tied to the software engineering. And if you're not driving the agent, it could build you out this stack that just is nonsensical.
Perfect example. The app I was just talking about that a
Mm-hmm.
friend vibe coded. Uh, he asked me to look at it, and
Mm-hmm.
I took a quick look, and I just asked, what database are you using? And it was just blank stare.
Yeah.
um, It's like, I don't know. And I say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I think maybe the reason the link you just sent me brings up no data is because you're not hooked up to your database. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay. How do I find out what that is? And then I walked him through it, and we figured it out. And it was Neon, not a database that I've worked with before, but one of
Mm-hmm.
those lightweight databases that AI can generate code for pretty quickly. And there was no valid connection string between the code and the database. So how would it know where to find it? It worked on his local machine because it hooked it all up. But when he tried to deploy it, it didn't complete the deployment. So it's these non-functional requirements, like you mentioned. So performance and scale, security is such a huge one. And even thinking of something like, oh, I want to go to a page and have a list of all my friends. And what if you have 1,000 friends? How are you dealing with pagination? Are you doing infinite scrolling? Are you querying everything all at once every time? Or are you querying just the first page and you're loading the pages on demand? That people don't understand all of the things that go into these solutions. And it's really complicated. And operationalizing it, I think of our convo with Dave Holbrook. Right. If you write it, you have to run it. And running it is at least as hard, if not harder.
Sure.
So yeah, really, really fascinating. And I feel like we're all super big and smart and awesome being able to talk about this as experienced coders. But I was hoping we could shift over and share why we even have this topic right now, because I think we stepped in it a bit ourselves.
I think we did. And, I've been thinking about this a little bit. People that are vibe coding, I think they're really excited. I think they're really excited to get something done, right? Like they're not really using AI as a tool. They're using AI as the driver, right? And we allowed that to happen for us the other day, the other week. We got really excited. We didn't spend as much time developing the spec. We are using Cursor Ultra, right? Like probably the most powerful of I'm going to say at least the most powerful IDE. I think that it gives you multiple powerful models, LLMs, to work with. Right. And we were really counting on the agents to help us develop the spec as we went. So we gave a foundation, a framework, and then it went. And we were even allowing the agent to make some pretty, interesting technical or architectural decisions for us. Maybe, I don't know what you think. I figure it got us 75% of the way there. And
it got us enough of the way there that we thought, this is unbelievable. This is amazing. We're so close to done right now.
Yes.
I'm freaking out. This is awesome.
Right. And and it was working, right? Until we thought, well, what if we need to process 10 transactions, right? How long will that take, right? And one of the choices it made is, well, let's wrap the processing of these transactions within a Firebase function, right? And based on experience, know Firebase functions typically around that 1 minute mark. They're not supposed to be long running, right? You get to about that 1 minute mark and their performance starts to degrade. All right, well, this isn't the way to manage a queue, right? So, let's start sharing with the agent. Why don't we do this another way? Why don't we use chaining of tasks, cloud tasks, which in that case, not an issue. Remove that architectural problem. And then as we were going through, it's like, oh, wow, there's this other thing that hasn't been considered. Let's resolve that. And that was a decent exercise in order to get us to the point where we felt comfortable with our ability to run the solution rather than just code the solution.
Well, and I think we got to that 75% and it was all just smoke and mirrors, because we let it get the better of us, and we got ahead of ourselves, and we thought, all right, we're so close. This is working. Let's throw, like you said, let's throw 10 transactions at it. And then as soon as you do that, you realize, oh, we're on a shaky foundation. So we're no longer at 75% and trying to close the 25% gap. Now we're at 75% and super shaky. So we have to go back to about 20%
Sure.
Tear the house down to its bones and make sure that we're building on a strong foundation. And that's what took all the time. And where we ended up was kind of rewriting the entire spec from the ground up, just to know that we weren't introducing something problematic. And it was a really good exercise, a good reminder of how much time, it wasn't wasted time, but of how much time you can spend just understanding a problem from different angles. And even understanding it from the, hey, can we just crank this out real fast and throw it into production and we're probably going to be fine? Or do we really have to break this down into a small problem and give it the attention it deserves? And sometimes the answer is the first one. If it's a really low impact thing that's 1 or 2 users and it'll only get exercised once or twice a month, you're not going to run into problems. It's not worth spending a ton of time. But this one's pretty critical. And I'm glad we ran into this problem, because we might have gotten bit by thinking that we were further along than we were.
Yeah, I agree. Where we got really lucky is we understand those technical concerns that are required when you're developing an application. You mentioned with your friend what they built, right? It's security, managing the database, it's performance, is this in fact a testable application? All of these things we only knew to do because we've been doing this for a long time. And in fact, we knew how to navigate the code, even though it wasn't the way that we probably would have structured it to begin with. We knew how to go out to Firebase and look at the collections and how to manage the queries there and such, right? So we not only were vibe coding, well, and we shipped it away, right? Vibe coding, we were managing the various tools that were being leveraged by the vibe coding, right? And this isn't just about the code now. It's how is the function executing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I think what's really fascinating is we got to a great place. We have a strong architecture. We feel like we've covered edge cases. But if we were to just drop this thing into production right now, it would have massive security holes. Why? Because we didn't yet address the security of the Firestore database. You have to put in Firestore rules. That's not something that came up once in our conversation with AI, even though it's been a consideration for the two of us from the beginning. So we have our list of 10 or so things that are just due diligence for putting something into production that didn't come up in our spec-based coding. This is where you have to bring that expertise to bear on the problem. And now, sure, I can ask AI, what is the set of Firestore rules that I should apply to make sure my application is locked down for production use for something that's exposed to millions of users? And it'll have some pretty great answers. But if you don't ask it, it's not going to offer that up.
That's right. That's right. I found that while we were more in the vibe coding approach, that we were really relying on the agent, right? Oh, this problem here. Please fix it. And then it fixes it. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Please fix it. Where it took us a little bit to say, stop. Let's step back. Let's really consider what we're trying to do. And it ended up being a lot of times like a complete switch in directions. It's like, so the rat holing with using the agent and seeing where it goes is a real risk. And I think that we are smart enough that going forward, even with a strong spec, it still should be we're awesome at problem solving. Okay, here we are. Let's step back. This is the direction, not tell me the direction. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
hey, go ahead.
I was going to say, just along those lines, when I started using AI for these types of coding conversations, it's probably been almost 3 years now that I've been doing this. And of course, the capabilities of these tools have improved in unbelievable ways, but we're still talking about these fundamental gaps that require an experienced software developer to put code out into the wild, out to where people can use it. So we haven't closed the gap completely, is the message.
No, we haven't. And these tools are truly tools. They're not magic. AI isn't doing the job for you. You're telling AI how to do the job, and it's supporting you. Just levels you up a bit, speeds things up. As we're closing here, I'm curious, was it fun what we did? Starting with that vibe coding.
It was exciting, and it felt easy. And I thought that just having the two of us with the experience we have kind of guiding the conversation, it was going to end up great. But your point right now about it's just a tool, you can't just bring two experienced software developers to a lightweight conversation and expect greatness.
Sure.
So it was really fun at the beginning. And then when we realized that we were only 75% of the way there, it was a lot less fun while we had to tear it all down and build it back up. But yeah, it was fun in the end.
Yeah, it was fun at the end. And I transitioned. There was that excitement. There was, I'm going to give this tool such little context, right? and it's still, even with little context, it got us that 75%. Then we realized it was only 20%. But I love solving problems. And there were so many problems along the way that we got to think through, which was, I wonder, like, what the heck did the agent do here? Let's debug, let's troubleshoot, let's solve that problem. And then, oh, here's another issue, right? Like, let's just, it was an exercise in problem solving rather than an exercise in, this is what AI tools really provided for us, and you should be delighted.
Totally right. We got to be mentors to the world's most enthusiastic and fast developer ever. And boy, did we get to teach it some things along the way.
We did. Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we were there and we didn't just let it loose.
Yep. Awesome. Well, this has been fun. I'm excited now to go build an actual spec for the next thing that we have to put into production, which we're going to do right after this call. So let's take our own advice and take our time writing this thing out. So it's going to be awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ben. See you soon.